Hello everyone, and welcome to an episode of Base Clinic where we're going to discuss the most popular long-range turrets and how they behave and work against the family of Conqueror hulls we have today. It's been a while since we did something like this, so I thought I'd bring updated information to the player community and I hope you enjoy it. There are some questions people keep asking, like what specials to use with this turret or that turret. Is the Executioner better than the Deadeye Executioner? Which one does more damage? Which one's better range? What armor should I use on my turrets? Or is the Deadeye Ballista useful? Should I even bother? Is the APOC outdated? I mean, does it still hurt ships at all? And what to do with the Glacial turret? So we'll try to take care of these questions and also explore the whole rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock dynamic of the game as far as base hitting is concerned. Before we get started and discuss each topic, I mean a few things to keep in mind. There are many specials, many different armor to use in turrets, transformers, and what I'm showing here is what I use on my base, and that's based on my layout and the guard ships I have. The whole thing works cohesively as a single machine, and so if you just copy that, the turrets, I mean, don't expect them to work perfectly on your base. That's just a starting point. So try learning here. I mean, a few new things. You probably know a lot about the game already, but get some extra knowledge about how the game works and adapt that to what you have on your base, the specials you have, the different weapons you have, right? And just adjust to even the turret level. If you're not interested in all the different things and math and comparisons that I'm gonna discuss, if you go to the last 2-3 minutes of the video where I show the summary slide, that's the too long didn't read version of it, okay? Feel free to skip. This is just a quick reminder. Players will be at different levels, so some will have level 4 turrets, some level 5 and 6 or 7, most likely just a mix of all of them. In many cases you want to keep your turrets simple to contain base power, so you don't go over the base power before you actually get what you want. But in many cases, especially some newer weapons like the Maxim gun, they actually, to work well, require a level 6 or 7 turret. Older weapons like the Apocalypse Mortar can actually work decently on level 5 or level 6 turrets. You don't need to take them to level 7 if you don't want to. But keep in mind, going to level 7 gives you the Transformer, which can buff your range or buff your damage. So you probably over time want to get all your turrets to level 7. Or at least level 6 where you can use the 2 specials. Okay, so a lot of the setups I'll build them step by step, and you see you can get to a point to the level 5 turret or level 4, but not all the way to the maximum damage output I'll be showing here. So the first turret I want to discuss is the Maxim gun turret. It deals concussive damage. It's brand new. You can still win that if you run the current time-limited campaign of base attacks against the rivers. It's fairly easy if you have tight seekers or a half-decent base. I saw people doing that with rhinos, and all you need to do is price pack 3. You don't even need to go to 4. The way I'm setting it up, and all my central island turrets, since I'm only talking about long-range turrets here, all the turrets I have in my central islands, they have the solar powered Scourge panels, and the reason is mostly because that gives me 50 base power back, which I can use to put more transformers and other stuff without exceeding the total base power. I'm using the expensive concussive charge special. Since this is a concussive turret, makes a big difference. You see damage goes from 4800 to 7680 total. Then the overall mechanic here that you see on every table is here's the total damage, right? And then you divide per number of salvo, in this case is 5, so I'm dividing by 5. Then I'm just assuming that every ship attacking your base is going to have siege battery 3 or some equivalent that gives 50% turret resistance, so I divide that number by 2, and that's what actually hits the ship. And now you have to subtract deflection, so a ship like the Spite has 0 concussive deflection. So even a basic Maxim gun that you can mount on a level 4 or 5 turret will hurt the Spite in full, like all the 480. You add the first special, and now you can beat the Spite, and you start hurting the Fury and the Revenge, assuming the Revenge doesn't have any resistance, added resistance. Now, the other special I use actually gives more splash and projectile speed, but doesn't increase damage, so it's not on my table. This is a damage only table. I'm not looking at splash gains, range gains, or accuracy gains, nothing else. I mean, I just mentioned them here, so splash and projectile speed, but I don't calculate it here. It's all damage. You add the AT transformer, you get extra 35% damage, so now per salvo you're dealing, even after discounting 50% turret resistance, you're dealing 1037. Okay, if you add a couple of fire support 2 fields around the turret, if you're able to, you get another 30% on top of that, and now you're actually able to damage the Vendetta a little bit. Okay, before it has all the stacks in Bloodthirst. When it up to like the 10th stack, it still does damage. After that, it's gonna be over, and then it goes down to minimum damage. If you're able to put 4 fire support through, then you can actually hurt the Vendetta no matter what. The best tanks against this ship, this turret, are these ships. So the Retribution, the Malice, and the Harlock Revenge, buffing all the Revenges. So that means all the Revenges will get this same number here. So these 4 ships now, the Retribution, Malice, and the Revenges buffed by the Harlock Revenge, can tank against the Maxim, only taking minimum damage. Here's the good old Apocalypse Mortar. In this case, I'm showing you guys both. A lot of people forget this mortar deals some radioactive damage as a secondary damage, so I'm showing them both because it's fairly significant. And it's also buffed, both of them are buffed by transformers and fire support fields, but only the explosive portion is buffed by the specials I use. So as you see, it starts at 7200 explosive damage. You divide that by a salvo of 4, right? And then minus 50% again. So I'm not going to repeat that every time, but that's how it works on this table for all the turrets we're talking about here. So even a naked APOC without any specials can hurt the Vendettas in full because they have 0 deflection. So all the 909 times 4 per round will hit the Vendetta in full. The Malice will take the radioactive damage only, and the Revenge can take some radioactive damage before it stacks to about a third of the total BT. Remember, the APOC's a dumb fire weapon, so it's gonna fire in the area where the ship was, so if the enemy is moving fast, it's likely gonna miss, and that's where the splash may do some damage. And a lot of these, actually both specials, the Eruption Pyre and the Xinthium shells, they accelerate the projectile speed, so it actually increases the odds of the weapon hitting and doing damage. When you add the 2 specials and you get the damage a bit higher, now you can hurt the Spites and the Malice before they get to halfway through their BT. So whenever they get to like step 8 or 10 of their BT, something like it, it won't be hurting them anymore. You add the Transformer, you add fire field supports. I mean, it doesn't really make a lot of difference. That's why I really don't care much in my base about putting Transformers and all that kind of stuff around them. I mean, they have a couple fire support, but they won't hurt more ships as a result of putting them around more fire support fields. That's what they do. They very good at hurting the Vendetta and doing some damage to these other ships. They will not touch the Revenge, the Harlock Revenge, the Retribution and the Fury, as all these ships have very high explosive deflection. And the radioactive portion can be countered by a single radioactive plate if you want, and that neutralizes that damage completely. So I think as far as mortar turrets are concerned, the Apocalypse is a little bit dated, so we could probably use a new one now, or you just use a guard ship that has mortars like the Harlock Citadel, or a Vendetta. Will do more damage than the Apocalypse actually. Here's the Deadeye Executioner. This is a limited turret. I think the maximum people can have is 5 or 6 of them. I actually have 4 or 5 built in my base. I really like the turret because the good news is it can cover all over the rim of your base, so whenever someone parks a ship around the rim, it's gonna hit it. Which is also the bad news, because people actually use that to park one of the strong ships against it, like a Vendetta, at the rim, or a Fury. And so the Deadeye gets distracted firing at that ship and won't fire at the spotter coming through your channel. So it's a good tactic hitting a base. It also hits submarines. It hits submerged, and with the damage it does, if you have ships to spot submarines trying to prep your guard, this turret's a great helper in killing the subs. So overall, it's very good against the Retribution and the Spite before they gain any sort of a deflection. So, but once you add the 2 specials here, Thermobaric Casing 3 and Fire Support Platform M, and notice that I have them all at R15, so you gotta factor that in your calculation. But at this level, you actually overcome both the Retribution and Spite even at full Bloodthirst. They will take more than minimum damage, right? And you can increase that with an AT Transformer, which I use. And now you think, if you have 4 of those, firing 3 missiles each, you have 12 going through. And even despite the 2000 deflection, you have 280, so you have 875 times 12 hitting every round, and over time that hurts. If you can cover them by a couple fire support 2 fields, even more, and now you're actually overcoming the Revenge deflection and the Malice deflection. So the Malice is actually not a great ship against a bunch of Deadeye Executioners. It will take damage. The ships you want to tank, use to tank against the Deadeyes, or to draw fire away from your tanks by parking on the sides, are either a Revenge fleet buffed by the Harlock Revenge, a Vendetta, or a Fury. And here's a comparison with the Executioner, the regular version of the Deadeye Executioner. This is not limited, probably a lot more people have this one. It's the same exact build, same transformer, same specials. The main difference, like this one will not hit underwater subs. It has a lower range, which on the bright side means people will not be able to just park a ship on the side of your base and draw fire away. But let's compare. When you get to the 2 specials at R15, the transformer and 2 fire support fields, this turret will be firing 2 missiles, each one doing 5000 damage. So let's say it's going against a Malice, each missile will be actually doing 2000 damage, for a total of 4000. The Deadeye was doing 3700, so you had 3800, so you had about 800 only hitting the Malice times 3 missiles. That was 2400 damage for the Deadeye Executioner getting through, right? Versus 2000 here per missile, so that's 4000 total, which is not double, not twice as much, but it's a lot more than the Deadeye Executioner. So I think in terms of damage, that answers the question. At this level, it's 3800 for the Deadeye, 5000 for the Executioner, right? and per missile. Now you gotta count the other one fires 3, this one fires 2, but even when you do the math, the Executioner wins. It only loses in range and not hitting submerged ships. Now here's a turret a lot of people ignore, or they just say it sucks, and I have it on my base and I really like it. Is the Deadeye Ballista. The way I built it, I use depleted uranium shell 3, and I use the EM rail level 3 with the AT transformer. So it's a low damage turret, but then you gotta keep in mind most chips have low deflection against ballistic, so it kind of works. It does 1010 damage, a single salvo, so after you apply resistance from siege battery or resonance capacitor or countermeasure special, you still get 500 truth. So that's enough to hit in full retributions and vendettas, which have 0 deflection against ballistics. You add the first special, depleted uranium shell 3 at R6, that's what I have right now, it's not even R15. And now you're hitting nearly 800, which is already enough to overcome the Fury, even at full PT. And it can do some damage to the Malice before it kills 3-4 buildings. After that, it just won't, it'll just do minimum damage. Now, adding EM Rail 3 is interesting because it gives you a 25% chance of doing 300 damage on top of the basic, so it's like 4 times what it says here, right? So it's 1000 plus 1000, 1000, and 1000 3 times, so it's along with DUS 3, it's 4600 after turret resistance 2300. So from now on, you gotta always calculate when you add transformers and everything that there's a 75% chance at a normal shot, 25% chance of a critical hit at plus 300%. Okay, and so in some cases, when you get down here with 2 fire support modules, now you have enough on the critical hit only to overcome a revenge, or to just do a truckload of damage to any of these ships here, except the Malice at full BT. So overall, I mean, the way of defending against this guy, because it's dumb fire against keep moving. If you park your ships, it's gonna hurt. And the Harlock Revenge, buffing the Revenges, and the Spite are the 3 ships immune to the Deadeye Ballista. You can apply a similar train of thought and specials and everything to the regular Ballista. The only difference that this one fires every 3 seconds, and the regular Ballista fires every 12 seconds. But if you put a bunch of them, you pretty much will always have one of them at least firing a critical shot and doing a lot of damage. If you don't have any of those, the lower version of them is the Javelin. Again, same principle, lower damage overall, but still enough to hurt Retributions, Vendettas, and Furies. So finally, I included the Glacial Launcher here because I use that in the Central Island, and pretty much every base I see and I hit has the Glacial Launcher in the Central Island. So I'm gonna call it a long-range turret and discuss it together here with the other ones. This is a funny turret because it's not actually about the damage it does, it's about slowing down the attackers. It's about making them fire slower, and if they have any resistances, it's about taking those resistances away. So the rest of your base defense can hit them and hurt them for longer before they make it. Overall, in terms of damage, it has big numbers like 65,000, but you divide that by 20 salvos, and after 50% turret defense, it's like in best case over there 2300 damage, which easily can be countered by a single shockwave plate, which is now called radioactive plate. So virtually, if you put a radioactive plate on the Malice or the Revenge or the Retribution, they're all immune to the damage done by this turret, right? But most of them will be slowed down. So what you gotta look actually is like, can your ship resist fields? Or does it have a resonance capacitor that's gonna be activated further by extra fields generated by this turret, which actually, instead of slowing down, can speed up a Vendetta, for instance. The only difference in this turret, like on all others I use the AT transformer, this one I use the range transformer, which reduces damage a little bit, but gives me extra range, 10% more range, so it buffs the range from 131 to plus 13, 142. Okay, making it more versatile and giving you more options about the location you can put that in your central island. As promised, here's the summary. So if you don't want to listen to all the stuff and details and analysis on each turret, in summary, I use the same armor on every turret in my central island just to gain more base power. It's not a big gamut of specials. Like you see Zintium shells in 3 different turrets, Eruption Pyre in 2. For the penetrating turrets is the same, Platform M and Thermobaric 3. And for all the ballistic turrets, the basic is the DUS-3 and EM Rail. There are variations. On some of them you could be using priority targeting, you could use smart warheads and some options like that, but there's no point in using defensive or resistance specials in turrets in the central island, because by the time the attacker is firing at these turrets, it means they've passed your guard, they passed your frontline turrets, and your base is probably dead. But in summary, you can see here 3 lines. So you know the Maxim Gum, for instance, will kill Spite, Fury, Revenge, hurt the Vendettas a little bit, and not work against the Retribution, Malice, and subs, and the Harlock Revenge buffing Revenges. You know the Apoc kills Vendettas real fast, will hurt Spite, Malice, Revenge a little bit, and so on and so forth. I mean, you can just take a look. So when you mix and match your fleet, and that's why I always say, don't go in a base with a fleet of 5 ships of the same type, unless they, you know, for instance, if a base doesn't have any cannons and any explosives, a fleet of 5 Vendettas would do just well. But usually your best, in best situation, mix and matching them, so you can actually have some strategies, or even have like 2 different types of tanks and 3 Vendettas, or 4 Furies and a Spite, or something like it, right? So you can alternate the leading ship, place a ship on the side, use different strategies. I mean, it requires skills, it's not just point and click anymore against any decent base. And in my mind, these 6 turrets here are a key part of your base defense. You don't need to have them all. You could use more Ballistas in place of the Apocs, you could use more Maxims in place of all the Ballistics. I mean, it's up to you, but just mix and match them so there's never a single ship that can just sail through without being hurt by your long-range turrets. So that's it. I hope that was a useful explanation of long-range turrets. And stay tuned, soon we're gonna have another base clinic about frontline turrets and the main defenders in game we use today. Take care everyone and have a great week.